So today we're going to take on imposter syndrome. So it's one of these things, I suppose, imposter syndrome, right? Which is just one of those weird little things, right? So I had imposter syndrome about coming on and talking about imposter syndrome. I was just sort of thinking, am I qualified to talk about imposter syndrome? I'm not a psychologist, I'm not qualified. And then suddenly it hit me. It's just kind of like, well, yeah, that's the whole point. That makes you massively qualified to speak about imposter syndrome because you get it, right? I have imposter syndrome. I think we all do to a degree. And there are a few scholarly articles on imposter syndrome that is well worth reading, actually, because a lot of them they talk about essentially the prevalence of it. And funnily enough, the highest prevalence of imposter syndrome is reported in high-performing females. Obviously, blokes get it as well, but more often than not, it's the female mind that seems to overthink and talk itself out of doing things because of imposter syndrome, which I found quite fascinating, really. So I think the article, I'll share the link for it in one of the groups, but it's by Claire and Imes. It's actually quite an interesting read, but I think it'll give you a bit of insight into sort of the mechanics of it and behind it. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is how I manage imposter syndrome for myself, because, like I said, I do get it, and you have to kind of get through this in order to kind of see the riches on the other side. For me, it's a bit like a rite of passage in a sense, and you do get through it. You do get through it. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to go through the Facebook post that I put out to say, imposter syndrome, what is it you're afraid of? So Sally, one of the first things said is thinking everyone is better than me, that they know more. And, I guess that's a pretty common one for me. The reality of it is that people know what they know, right? And I know, so give you an example, right? So imposter syndrome, when I go up and do presentations, stand up there, there's always some dick who sits right in front of you whenever I'm doing any kind of talk, right? Not with you guys because you're different, but for the room, people I don't know, they see my name on the, on the agenda, and they might run a successful business or whatever, and they'll sit right in front of me, and all of a sudden you're just kind of like, shit, who's that staring at me? He's there to ask me really challenging questions because he knows more than I do about what I'm about to talk about. And the reality of it is that they don't. I advise and offer consultations for people who are vastly more wealthy than I am. In some cases you could say more successful than I am in their chosen field, in their given field. Now, no one knows more about ascetic entrepreneurship than I do. No one knows more about it than I do. And the reason is because I have created it. So how can anyone know more about it if I'm the originator of it, if I've designed it, and if I have all of the insight? And the key here is it's the insight that you have that no one else knows because they've not created it. They might know it or they might have an idea, but you've spent the time, the energy, the focus, learning it, exploring it, researching it. That's why I talk about making sure that you do signature systems and signature series, because it's that insight, that the earning of the knowledge that gives you the power, the strength, right? So no one can know more than you. If someone's walking into your clinic, your business, and they give it Mr. or Mrs. I know more than you, guess what you need to do? Not treat them. Get shot of them. And it's not because they know more than you, it's just because they're a dick. It's as simple as that. It really is. So the imposter in that aspect of it is it's fear, right? It's fear of being exposed as a fraud. But you're not frauds because you've created the techniques, you've created the packages, you've created the business that they're walking into. So how can you be a fraud? That's like telling Steve Jobs that he's a fraud, at that point telling him that he was a fraud, because you know more than Apple about him because you use his phone. So, right, Steve Jobs, I'm more of an expert on this than you are because I use it. It's just not true, is it? It's ridiculous. I want to crack as much of this as possible to give you the confidence to move forward, especially those of you who are going into performance. And you're going to need to knock down some of these barriers, because every time you step in and do something new, the imposter will return. It will. Every time you try and do something new, the imposter will return. Imposter syndrome over creating the performance program was enormous. But the trick is I get used to moving through it. I've become accustomed to knowing it's going to come, knowing that I'm going to get that bolt of energy, that I'm going to get that emotion, that I'm going to get that self-doubt. But then I've created strategies to work through it. One is, people are going to know more than me about it. Not this, they don't, because I'm creating it. So that's one thing to step forward through. So Amy's saying, look at Walt Disney, he couldn't draw very well. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Walt Disney couldn't draw very well. Walt Disney also got sacked from a couple of jobs, he told he had no imagination, etc., etc. One of the interesting things about Walt Disney, for me, is one of the originators of the whole diversified business model, because he couldn't. One of his strengths were around business and commercialization, and I think if you look at what he did, what his real strength was, is he broke an animated film apart into what I call, diversified chargeable items. So if you took Snow White, for example, what he had in Snow White is, you've got a film, you've got the animated movie, but he actually you've got that animated movie, you've got really cool little merchandise, so you've got the dwarves and things like that. You've also had, what else did they sell? They sold a book of the story with illustrations taken from the film. They sold the music, as sheet music, and it was played in schools on the piano. They sold scripts, they broke, and then obviously theme parks later on. They broke it into assets. That's the word I'm looking for. His strength was breaking things really into assets. So, so it's a really I love the sort of Walt Disney story. So a guy couldn't draw, but became, an incredible businessman. So so just move these people on, right? If Mr. I know more than you, piss off. Right. Not being able to pay my bills. Or can't do the monkey bars. Okay, well, I can take the second one first. I can't do the monkey bars either because I'm too heavy and my arms are too weak. Not being able to pay my bills. If you watch a YouTube video, it's by a guy called Simon Sinek, and it's called Start With Why. It's a really interesting vid, but he talks about the brain having kind of three levels to it: the lizard brain, or the reptilian brain, the mammalian brain, and the cerebral neocortex. I think technically they are the earliest part of the brain, the least evolved, is the amygdala. And it controls emotion. It's fight or flight. It doesn't have language. So it purely deals on emotion, and when it gets triggered, it shortcuts the other parts of the brain. So when I meet a lot of people in aesthetics, when we come into AE, I'm having to deal with a really heavily firing amygdala. And a lot of it's down to money, down to finance. And it's a legitimate fear, right? Not being able to pay the bills, not getting it wrong and not being able to put any cash in, not have enough money. And a trick that I learnt for how to manage that is to take your daily rate or amount of money that you consider to be a relatively significant amount of money. So one of the things that you need to write down right now as an action point, as a thing to do, is create, if you're in Starling, you create a space in your account. If you have a separate bank account, whatever it is you want to do. Two things I want you to do. First thing is I want you to load a credit card, or not load a credit card, load a debit card or something like that with £1,000, or even if you want to take it out in cash, have it there somewhere in the house. Somewhere you've got easy access to money, like really easy access. So you could grab if the shit hit the fan, you could grab £1,000, right? And then I want you to work towards every month putting some money away to reach your 10K, right? And that is your buffer. That's your pot. And you don't touch it. You don't spend it. It's absolutely not for touching or anything like that. What that's to do is that helps you manage that part of that anxiety. Because once you've got that covered off, then you're going to be massively more creative. Funny, it's a bit of one of the secret things that we're talking about in performance, right? It's one of the first things we do is look at that, is get quick cash through, because it settles everything down. Then you've got, right, I can breathe. Okay, got that big box ticked. Okay, I don't have to worry about money anymore. I still have this. I had a moment this morning, right, where my buffer, my little protective cash pot, has been depleted. It has been depleted. We had some big bills come through, and it threw me a bit this morning. Actually, it was just like, Elizabeth's going boom, 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 and what I did is we looked at plan, strategy, and understanding. Right, I need to refill that pot before I do anything else, because I know by refilling that pot, that will help me be more focused, more consistent, more disciplined in what else I'm doing. So this is what we need to do. So just go and get yourself $1,000, right? I don't care where you get it from. You're a clever people. If you take out of that, think, oh no, I've depleted that pot, you'll fill it up. Don't worry about it. But I need you to do that. Grab $1,000. You need to out-earn the spending. I mean, that sounds like an obvious thing to say, right? And you need to earn more than you spend. I get it, right? But you've got bills, etc., to build up. The more that you earn, the more you spend, because you've got to develop and create the processes, strategies, etc., to generate revenue. But because you've built a bigger engine. So for you've built this clinic, you can create some strategies, create some things, go out and sell it. If you think, right, I want to go and pluck some money out of the air, create a little program, look at your client base, work out who's would be interested in this, and then ring them up and sell it to them. Find a problem to solve the problem, and then sell it to them, right? That will generate income. That might even generate your 10K. And then you stuff that 10K in a little pot and you leave it alone. Or 11, because you've got to stick one in there. It is that straightforward, but it's just you've got to do it. So if anybody needs help with this part, reach out, if it makes sense, but you're talking yourself out of it, then let me know. I've done this for people many, many times. She won't mind me saying it, but I did this for Sally Wagstaff. Right back where I met Sally, Liz's brain was going mental. She needed to generate some money. So we did that. We created a package for her clients. We sold it to them. She generated 18 grand in a month. Biggest month she'd ever had. And it put the fires out for a bit. But unfortunately, her business wasn't generating sustainable revenue, so we ended up in the same place a little bit further down the road. She wouldn't mind me telling that story at all. But, in the short term, I saved Christmas, which is something I was very proud of. So, Kelly, always waiting for my work to dry up because I'm not good enough to be in business. Okay, so I absolutely get that, It's, again, the fear is I'm because I'm no good, someone's going to find out that I'm not a proper business person and I'm going to get it all wrong. And I can relate to that one massively, because I think it's that fear that actually crushed iConsult, that I was winging it. And actually the truth is I was winging it. I was doing something that had never been done before. And the big mistake I made was not bringing in someone who knew what they were doing. And that was, because I was reliant on, I had to hit every single door with my face. And eventually you do that often enough, you knock yourself out, right? But if bring in someone who knows where the doors are and how to open it, life gets a bit easier. And the thing is, Kelly, is you are not, the first thing is, you are good enough to be in business. You have tripled your business in a very, very short space of time, and you're doing all the right things. And it's just worrying about focusing on what you can control and what you can't control. So the first thing is, have you surrounded yourself with the right people? So, have you created the environment to succeed? You have. You've created the environment to succeed. Right people, right place, doing the right things. And are you doing the right things consistently with discipline, focus, consistency, and discipline? Yeah, you are. So we can't control the number of people who come through the door. We absolutely can't. We can't really control how much they spend. But all we can do is we can control is what we do and the activities that we take. And if you're getting the right people in the right place, doing the right things, you'll get the right result. Simple as that. That's, massive lesson from me on dealing with all of this. Do you have the right people? Yes. In the right place? Yes. Doing the right things? Yes. Then you'll get the right result. There is a formula to all of this, and that's kind of it. And, as the bigger the numbers get, the more rattled we become, the more inward focused we become. Sometimes the more scared we become and just, start tightening up and not investing and not doing this and doing that. But you're not doing the things that made you successful in the first place. So for you, just your work, it may dry up. It may for a time. But if you're consistently if you keep pushing, the non-sexy bit of business, consistency and discipline, then it will be short-lived. And also because you've got your 10 grand in the bank, you're comfortable that you can weather the storm. This is you see how a lot of this is all completely connected. Cool. So, Stevie, people realizing I'm not a grown-up. Yeah. Looking for the more adult in the room. I still have that, right? Those of you at the performance workshop on Thursday will have met Heather. So Heather Hancock, non-exec director of AE, is the grown-up in my world, really. The more adult. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't really mind people realizing that there are other people in the team. I don't have to be the grown up, but it's more, I think, about leadership, right? And respect. And you know what? Does it matter if you're not the grown up? I don't think it does. I think it's just about, having credibility is probably more the fear of not being credible. And that comes from credibility, authority and knowledge, right? So if you know what you're talking about and you just talk about those things, then you'll have credibility. You guys have got credibility in bucket loads. You have, So to someone else, you are the grown-up. Someone coming in to your clinic and asking for help, you are the grown-up. You asking me for help, I'm the grown-up, and me asking Heather for help, she's the grown-up. So, at what point does it stop? Who does Heather ask for help? That's the question. Maybe we should ask her and find out who that grown-up is. And then he's got a grown-up, or she will have a grown-up too. So, you're not a grown-up. You're just long list of children. There we go. How about that? My God, how philosophical is that? We are not grown-ups. We are just one on a long list of children. Okay, Louise, failing. Fear of failure. Yeah, failure is part of business, part of life. You are going to land on your face. Without sounding trite, you do have to learn from it. And sometimes when you get into a rhythm, you're going to get peaks and troughs. And there was a sales course I was on quite a few years ago, actually. It was at the start of my sales career. And the guy who ran the sales course was a Christian, he was a preacher. And he was telling us that, in his sort of end of course sort of address, about how he talked about how you give faith and what faith is. And he said that faith is essentially getting to Friday and feeling that there's pain in the world, but knowing that Sunday's coming. And he'd be there on Sunday and he'd say, to his congregation, that how he ended it would be like, that when you get to Friday, there'll be pain in your world, but just remember that Sunday's coming. And I've always that sort of stuck in my head a little bit, that I know that it doesn't matter how bad things get, if I just keep going, I'll come out the other side. So I don't really fear failure, because there's nothing I can do about it. When it hits me, it hits me. But when it's there, I know actually that good things are going to come. So, it's just managing all of that and just, managing your headspace around those sorts of things. Elaine, my face doesn't fit, so stay in the NHS. Your face doesn't fit in medical aesthetics? Really? Then none of our faces fit in medical aesthetics. I know my face doesn't fit, which is why I created an entire little world for us. So don't worry about that aspect of it. You're creating your own market for people who know, like, and trust you, and your face fits there. So don't worry about where it doesn't fit. They're not your people. Fuck them, right? Just stay focused on serving the people who you want to serve. And your face doesn't fit. Don't worry about it. It's like going back to school and not being the most popular kid in school. And you know what? You got your own group of friends. That's fair enough. What happened to the most popular kids in school? For a lot of them, it's not ended well. So, don't strive to be that person. Just strive to be, the leader in your own community and, and focus on it. Focus on that. Kerry, not bringing enough money, always needing agency work. I think I kind of picked that one up with not being able to pay my bills. That's, again, it's just fear of dosh. Not thinking I'm good enough as I'm not a doctor or dentist. Okay, so that's academic insecurity. Shall I let you into a secret? Secret is this: I have a science degree. I'm a Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Computer Science, and I don't have a GCSE Maths. Well, I do have a GCSE Maths. I've got a D. Couldn't get my head around the maths. Still managed to do it. It doesn't matter. Your background is your background. We've all arrived at the same point with different skill sets. And the nurse element of it, I think for me, it's that I didn't ever become a naval officer. I didn't, pass my GCSEs at the right same time. I know what I know, and I know that I know more than most people the sphere, the niche that I'm in, aesthetic entrepreneurialism. I'm world class at that. So that's what I'm going to continue to develop. When people talk about, minimize your weaknesses, maximize your strengths. Forget about the minimize your weaknesses. Just get shot of all of that stuff that you're not that good at. Don't do it. Do the stuff you're really good at and make a lot of money on it. That's the best philosophy I've ever been given. Forget about your weaknesses. They're not important. Not when you get to 47, they're not important. They're not going to change. There's very little I can, I can't minimize my weaknesses now. I can't all of a sudden become really good at admin. You could become a doctor, you could become a dentist, but is it really the best use of your time? No. But you're a bloody good nurse, world-class nurse. So be that and not worry about what you are not and maximize what you are. Louise, thinking I'm not good enough and also being confident when dealing with objections. Okay, so the first bit about not good enough, again, it's just look at what you are. Look at the strengths you've got. Look at the testimonials you get. Great way to deal with a lot of these sort of feelings of inadequacy is routinely collect feedback. I screenshot. Anytime someone says something nice about me, I screenshot it. And then I stick it on my phone, and every now and again I'll look through. And I'll look through at the changes I've made for people, the impact I've had on people's lives. And then when someone is not quite so nice about me or bounces something, I'm much more confident in, look, I don't need you. I know there are better people than you as a client coming down the road. Had one the other day, bit of a tyre kicker. Well, is it possible that I can have a look at it first? I said, well, no. We want to try before you buy. Okay, well, can I have a little bit of filler just to see if I like it? Well, what do you mean? So that's what you're asking me, isn't it? Can I have a little bit of filler? A little bit of Bocal? I won't pay you. I just want to see if I like it. Get fucked. That's what she'd say to me. Piss off. No chance. So why is it okay to do that to me? But it's not. It's a lack of respect. It means you don't believe in what I can do. You don't trust me. Therefore, you've not absorbed enough of my content. So go back round, do another lap, go into Matrix, go over there, read that, and then if you're still not interested, piss off. That's confidence in dealing with objections, right? And someone says, what's the objection on? Oh, you're too expensive. Well, you know what? That's just tough shit. I'm really, really good at what I do. And if you decide you're confident enough or have enough belief to take the step forward, you're going to get a great result. If you're not, then I don't really want to work with you because it's just going to be difficult. So you've just got to get in your head into this place is that you are absolutely world class in what you do. So look at your strengths. Forget about the weaknesses. Just look at your strengths. Go back to create a brag file if you've not done that yet, and collect all the clippings and all the things that people have said that are great about you, and read them as often as you like. Just have them there on the phone or in a folder. Just go through it and read them. And if you haven't got any, well then there's another job there, don't you? To go and collect them. Catherine, fear of my best not being good enough. Fear of failure, in my own eyes as well as other people. Fear of my best not being good enough. That's the thing is, if it's not, then that's not what you can do. I actually think, your best is good enough, absolutely, because how could it not be? You're a bloody good dentist, you're great in aesthetics. So if you're doing your best, it's going to be pretty much better than a lot of people's. So just keep going. Just, go back to the brag fire. It's back to looking at, what it is that makes you strong, and focusing on that and minimizing and doing less of what it is that you're not so good at, is what I would say. Amy, my sales drying up. So you've got to remember, okay, so back to something I said yesterday, is you've got to remember that business goes in waves. It has to go in waves. Sometimes you're hot and sometimes you're not. It's just a fact. When you're hot, drive, try and put money away. This is the thing where people come unstuck quite often, is when they're in a hot streak, they assume the hot streak's going to last forever, and it won't. And they overspend. They invest massively in things. Rather than when you're down, actually, for me, at the time it is when you're not selling as much. You're still selling, but it's just, you've just gone off the boil a little bit. So it's time to really, put your big girl pants on and over-create content. Because if you've got the time, because you're not generating any sales, then you've got the time to over-create content, to look at what are the problems out there that people, that you can solve for people. How can you solve those problems? And then look at solving them. When you go cold, is it because that your product is no longer relevant or service is no longer relevant? That's not true. Is it because you've gone through your warm leads? Possibly. And then is it because then you need to move into a cold lead strategy because you need to spread your net out a little bit wider to attract people who haven't heard of you yet? Most likely, that possibly where you're at, that you've been through your warm leads, they've all bought, and your buying cycle is lengthening because they're all happy with what they have. That's possibly it. So, it's when things like that happen, fear of my sales drying up, get strategic and look at what it is that's happening to you and why is that going to happen. If you can get ahead of the game, then you're going to be in a much, much better place. And people realizing how easy my products are to make and doing it themselves. The last part of that is the key. And shall I let you into a little secret, my dear? Is people are generally quite lazy. And, I'm a prime example of that, right? I know how a lawnmower works. I know that mowing a lawn is really, really easy, but I don't want to do it. I will pay someone to mow the lawn, right? Because they'll just do a better job at it than I will. Because they're more interested, because they're more focused on it, because they're more passionate about it, because that's what they've chosen to do. I could probably learn how to make a twisty, if I'm honest, but I don't want to. Because why? Because I'm not interested in it. Because if I wanted to buy one, I'd buy one from someone who has immersed themselves in that whole vintage culture for years, who understands fabric, who looks at colour, who knows, has much more insight into it than I do. But you know what? If I decide that I can't be arsed, I'm too tight and I want to make a shitty twisty, I'll do it. But they're not your clients. So the other thing around this is, right, my sales drying up and my people and drying up. Do you know how many people there are in the world? There are over 60 million in the UK alone, right? There are 9 billion in the world. There are lots of people with lots of money. So the chances are of you running out of people who are slim. where we say 500 clients spending £2,000 a year is £1 million business, right? And if we land you £1 million business in 3 to 4 years' time, you're going to be happy with that. But you may only be you might only have a core of 500 clients. 500 clients out of 60 million is not many people. So relax, right? Relax. I'm quite relaxed, and I've got a much smaller client base or potential client base than you have. Much smaller. Imposter syndrome is it's all up here. It's all up here. And you can break through it. And when you do, you come out the other side, right? And then you'll be able to advise and help people and support people on how to break through imposter syndrome as well. It's just got one of those things you just got to push on. And I know it sounds trite, and as Emma said, it makes sense, but it's not easy as it sounds. It doesn't have to be that hard. I'm looking back on it now, and I'm not saying for a minute that, I am free from imposter syndrome. I am absolutely not. I still get it. I still have that little bolt of fear when I'm about to send an email sometimes, but when I put a post out, when I'm about to send an email campaign. So I schedule my email campaigns. So I write it, but because I'm kind of like a bit, I'll reread the email and check, and kind of, is that right? Well, does this make sense? Is that right? Now what I do is I write it, even the RCS blog emails that you get, and I do another one today on imposter syndrome. And I'll finish it, and then I'll schedule it for an hour, put it in, because then it goes when I'm not thinking about it. And then all of a sudden it's like your campaign's gone. It's like, oh my God, it's gone. Those are little things I do to help me manage it all. Because, I'm people like you, right? It's the same thing. Every day I'm having to work on this and work on me. And the more I do it, the more successful I become. So, it's not just about the numbers. It's about the human side of things as well. So don't forget that. I'll just do a quick recap, right, on some of this and some key actions that you can take. One is get a brag file. Absolutely. If you haven't, do it already. Do it now. And if you have, take some photographs of the screenshots of the reviews and carry them around on your phone. I have mine on my phone. And every now and again, I'll just read through, look at some of the nice stuff that people have said. Makes me feel good. Makes me know I'm doing the right things. And insulates me against the knobhead will come through the door going, well, can I try before I buy? Well, yeah, there's 150 people here who didn't do that and all got amazing results. Why would I let you do that? You're not really for me, or I'm not really for you in that instance as well. So do that. Get that brag file with you. To look at from a financial planning point of view, get £1,000. Stuff it somewhere in cash or, ready to access. Work on a strategy where you can put some money away to create a 10K buffer. Yes, I know it's not as easy as it sounds. And if we need to look at how we can help you do that, we'll look at how you help you do that. So through savings, so you might have to cut back on different things. Again, we looked at the same thing this morning, looked at where our money was going, thinking, we're going to have to adjust things because I like to have that buffer sat there. And if it's not, get a bit antsy, start worrying about weird stuff, you're not being creative. If you're not being creative, your business will suffer further down the road. So it's quite an important thing to do. So get your buffer in place. Even if it's not 10, make it 5. That'll do, just keep working towards that whole close. Fear of failure and inadequacy and being the most grown up. You've surrounded yourself with the right people. You're in a great community. Okay, talk to each other in AE. Talk to each other in Accelerator. Talk to each other in all the numerous different methods you've got, mechanisms you've got to communicate with each other. Because that's what that will help you. Everybody's going down the same thing. And the funny thing is, if you look at that, is if you're all experiencing the same anxieties and the same concerns, you can't all be right. But you can't all be wrong, right? So to talk to each other, and just think, don't worry about the money. Build the market, build the things of value, solve the problems, and the money will come. It will come. And how do I know all of this? How do I know all of this is true? is because I'm living proof it worked for me. I did it. Did all of this, and it's working, and it continues to work. I'm continuing to attract the right people. We continue to grow and develop. We're helping more people, helping people in a different way, and everybody's getting success. So I know it's working.